88-year-old widow sits alone in a roadside diner, her hands trembling around a chipped coffee mug. A man twice her size decides she's an easy target, until a past she never speaks of begins to rise from the shadows. What follows is not loud, not fast, but inevitable. Because some legacies don't die quietly, and some suns never stop watching the road. Before we begin, pause with me for just a moment. Where are you watching from today? A city, a small town, somewhere in between. And if stories of quiet strength, hidden sacrifice, and earned justice matter to you, please subscribe now. These stories deserve to be told and remembered. The first blow landed before anyone understood what they were seeing. A thick hand slammed down on the counter, rattling silverware, sloshing coffee, sending a tremor through the old woman's bones. The man's voice followed, low, venomous, too loud for a place that smelled of bacon grease and burnt toast. He leaned over her like a storm cloud, his breath sour, his shadow swallowing her whole. Don't ignore me when I'm talking to you. The widow did not raise her eyes. Her name was Margaret Hale. She was 88 years old, and in that moment, the entire diner watched as if frozen, forks hovering midair, mouths half open, while a man with nothing left to lose decided to take it out on someone who had already lost everything. She had only asked him to lower his voice. That was all. Margaret had been sitting in the same booth she always chose, the one by the window, where the morning light crept in softly, forgiving the lines in her face. Her coat was neatly folded beside her, threadbare but clean. Her hands, veined and spotted with age, wrapped around a ceramic mug that had been warmed by countless refills. She did not look weak. She looked tired. Tired in a way that came from decades of holding herself together when no one was watching. When the man stood up, scraping his chair back violently, the silence in the diner thickened. No one intervened. No one spoke. Eyes darted away, pretending interest in pancakes and newspapers. Margaret felt the first shove before she understood what was happening. Her shoulder struck the edge of the booth. Pain bloomed sharp and white. The mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, hot coffee soaking into her shoes. Still, she did not cry out. She had learned long ago that noise did not always bring help. Margaret Hale had buried a husband at 49. She had buried friends, neighbors, a sister who died too young and a brother who drank himself into nothing. But worst of all, she had buried silence. Her son. No gravestone marked his name. No folded flag had been placed in her hands. Just a knock on the door decades ago and a man who would not meet her eyes. He's gone, he had said. And that was all. The man in the diner grabbed her arm now, fingers digging into skin that bruised too easily. His grip was impatient, careless. He yanked her up from the booth, and the world tilted. A plate shattered. Someone gasped. Margaret's knees buckled, but she stayed upright. Not because she was strong, but because she had practiced standing through pain for most of her life. You think you can tell me what to do? He snarled. Her voice, when it came, was barely louder than breath. I think you're hurting people who never hurt you. The words landed like an insult. His response was a slap. It echoed in the space between booths, sharp enough to turn stomachs. Her glasses flew from her face, skittering across the floor. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Still, no one moved. Margaret tasted copper and coffee, and something old and familiar restraint. She thought of her kitchen table at dawn. Of hands she had once bandaged after motorcycle accidents. Of engines roaring down highways she never saw. Of letters that stopped coming and phone calls that never did. She had learned to survive by being invisible. The man shoved her again. This time she fell. Her hip struck the floor with a sound that made even the waitress flinch. Margaret lay there, breath shallow, staring at the underside of tables, the scuffed shoes of strangers who would not meet her gaze. And then, quietly, unmistakably, something changed. In the corner of the diner, near the jukebox no one used anymore, a man had stood up. He had been there the whole time. Leather jacket worn soft by years of wind and road, gray threaded through his beard. His posture calm, deliberate, like someone who had seen violence often enough to know when it was about to turn ugly. On his back, partially hidden beneath the jacket, was a patch. A winged skull. Red letters. No one noticed it yet. Margaret pushed herself up onto one elbow. Her hands trembled. Pain radiated through her hip, her shoulder, her pride. She could feel tears pressing behind her eyes, but she swallowed them down. She had promised herself long ago she would never beg. The man loomed over her again, emboldened by the silence. "Stay down," he said. "That's where you belong." Her answer came from somewhere deeper than fear. "I've stood longer than you know." That was when the man by the jukebox took his first step forward. The diner seemed to inhale. He did not rush, did not shout. His boots moved with measured certainty. The kind that came from understanding exactly how much force was required, and when restraint mattered more. The man assaulting Margaret glanced up, irritated. "Mind your business," he snapped. The biker did not stop. When he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that people leaned in without realizing it. "You've had enough chances." Margaret recognized that voice before she turned her head. Time folded in on itself. She was back in her kitchen. Younger hands wrapping bandages around scraped knuckles. Back to a boy who never learned how to sit still. Back to the sound of an engine outside at midnight and the relief that followed. Her heart stuttered. No, it couldn't be. She hadn't seen him in 37 years. The man laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "What are you gonna do, old man?" The biker shrugged out of his jacket. That was when the patch showed clearly. The room shifted. People knew that symbol, even if they pretended they didn't. It carried stories, warnings, a reputation earned over thousands of miles and harder lessons. The man's smile faltered. "Back away from her," the biker said. Still calm, still controlled. "She's nobody." The man sneered, but his grip loosened. Margaret struggled to her feet, using the edge of the booth. The biker turned just enough to see her face fully. Their eyes met, and the years disappeared. Her voice broke for the first time. "Daniel." The name hit him like a punch. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. "Yes, Mom." The diner froze. Daniel Hale had not died. He had disappeared, ridden away from a life that could not hold him, into brotherhoods that demanded loyalty, silence, and blood-earned respect. He had lived fast, lost friends, buried more than he could count. But he had never forgotten the woman who taught him how to endure pain without becoming cruel. The man who had attacked her took a step back. "Your kid?" he asked, uncertainty creeping in. Daniel nodded once. "That's right." The man scoffed, trying to reclaim ground. "So what, you think?" Daniel moved then, not with rage, with precision. He disarmed the man in seconds, twisting his wrist just enough to bring him to his knees. The motion was efficient, almost gentle. The kind of restraint that came from deep control. He leaned close. "You hit my mother," Daniel said softly. "That's a debt you don't get to walk away from." No one cheered. No one filmed. They stood in stunned silence as the man was released, shaking, humiliated, alive. Daniel did not pursue him. Justice, he knew, wasn't about how far you went. It was about where you stopped. Police arrived minutes later, summoned by a waitress whose hand still shook. Statements were taken. Witnesses spoke now, all at once. Words spilling over guilt. Margaret sat wrapped in a blanket, Daniel's jacket around her shoulders. She held his hand like she might lose him again if she let go. One officer glanced at Daniel's patch, then at Margaret. His voice softened. "Mom," he said. "Are you all right?" She nodded. "I am now." The man was led away in cuffs. As he passed Margaret, he would not meet her eyes. Daniel watched until he was gone. Then he knelt in front of her. "I should have come sooner," he said. She touched his face, fingers memorizing lines time had carved. "You came when it mattered." Before they left, the diner did something unexpected. Every patron stood, not applause, just respect. Margaret walked out slowly, leaning on her son's arm, sunlight spilling across the parking lot. For the first time in years, she did not feel invisible. Strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly in a diner, nursing old wounds. Sometimes it rides the long way home. And sometimes justice arrives not with shouting, but with a hand held steady, and a silence that finally speaks. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from. Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet heroes among us.